Have you ever thought about how unfair the world of Harry Potter truly is? What if one of the most tragic stories in the series was hidden in plain sight, disguised as a charming subplot? In today's video, you will find out why the history of house elves is the most brutal and unjust tale in the entire magical universe. The Harry Potter books and movies are often seen as a light-hearted fantasy for children. And at first glance, that makes sense. The early stories of the young wizard are filled with wonder, humor, and adventure. But beneath the spells and Quidditch matches, there's a darker reality, one filled with cruelty, oppression, and entire races doomed to suffering. One of the greatest injustices in the wizarding world is the fate of house elves. These small, peculiar creatures draped in little more than rags exist only to serve. Their magic is strong, yet they are forbidden from wielding wands. They live to obey, their lives dedicated to wizards who rarely show them kindness. Most fans remember Dobby, the brave and loyal elf who sacrificed himself to save Harry Potter. But his story is an exception. Most house elves live in silent servitude, bound by ancient magical contracts, never daring to dream of freedom. Where did they come from? Why are they trapped in this miserable existence? Clues scattered throughout the book suggest a tragic past. Centuries ago, something catastrophic happened to their people, something that left them desperate and vulnerable. In their time of need, wizards offered them refuge. But that kindness came with a cost. The elves, in gratitude, swore eternal servitude. What began as an act of loyalty turned into generations of enslavement. Over time, wizards grew comfortable with this power. They took the elves' magic for granted, stripping them of their rights and independence. Even worse, the elves themselves came to accept their fate. They saw freedom not as a gift, but as a punishment. A disgraced elf, one cast out by their master, felt only shame. That's the most horrifying part of their story. What could be worse than a race so deeply brainwashed that they love their own chains? Even Hogwarts, supposedly a beacon of justice, played a role in this oppression. The house elves who worked there were granted more freedom than their counterparts in noble wizarding families, but they were still forced to labor endlessly, hidden in the shadows of the castle. Yet no one seemed to care. Even kind-hearted wizards like Hagrid never questioned it. Only one person did, Hermione Granger. She was outraged when she saw a house elf, Winky, publicly humiliated by her master, Barty Crouch Sr. That moment changed everything for Hermione. She founded SPEDW, an organization to fight for elf rights, and even convinced Harry and Ron to join. But no one took her seriously. Not even the elves themselves wanted to be freed. Some, however, played significant roles in the story, though they are often overlooked. Kreacher, the bitter and broken servant of the Black family, was used by Voldemort in one of his most sinister schemes. Remember the cursed locket hidden in the cave? Voldemort forced Kreacher to drink the poison guarding it. Later, the elf returned with his master, Regulus Black, who stole the locket and replaced it with a fake. That one act of defiance cost Regulus his life, but Kreacher never forgot. Then there's Winky, an elf who never made it into the films but played a heartbreaking role in the books. She was fiercely loyal to the Crouch family, tasked with guarding Barty Crouch Jr., a convicted Death Eater. When he escaped, Winky was cast out in disgrace. She was devastated. To her, freedom was the worst punishment imaginable. She fell into despair, drowning her sorrows in butterbeer, unable to find purpose without a master to serve. House elves were kind, hard-working, and incredibly powerful. Yet their destiny was shaped by wizards who saw them as nothing more than tools. Even in a world where magic could make anything possible, no one ever truly fought for their freedom. And that is what makes their story the most tragic injustice in the Harry Potter universe. For centuries, house elves remained invisible, their suffering ignored even by those who considered themselves champions of justice. Wizards took their obedience for granted, passing them down through generations like family heirlooms. Even the kindest witches and wizards never questioned why elves existed only to serve. The few who did were dismissed as eccentric or naive. Their magic was strong, perhaps even stronger than that of wizards, but they were forbidden from wielding wands. This rule wasn't just a precaution, it was a form of control. Wizards feared what elves could do if given the freedom to use their full abilities. The ban on wand use ensured that elves remained dependent, forced to channel their magic only in ways that benefited their masters. Yet, despite their immense power, elves saw themselves as weak. Their minds had been shaped by centuries of servitude, their wills bent under the weight of unbreakable magical oaths. An elf could no more imagine life outside of service than a fish could imagine living outside of water. The very idea of freedom filled them with dread, not hope. Take Winky, for example. When she was cast out, she didn't rejoice. She broke down. She wandered through Hogwarts in disgrace, drowning in self-loathing. Her freedom was not a gift, it was a curse. She was no longer needed, no longer useful. She had failed. This was the ultimate cruelty of their existence. Wizards didn't just enslave elves, they convinced them to love their chains. But not all elves were content with their fate. Dobby was different. He saw the injustice of his people's suffering and dared to dream of something more. His time with the Malfoys had been a nightmare, filled with pain, humiliation, and endless servitude, yet he found the strength to defy them. When Harry Potter tricked Lucius Malfoy into freeing him, it was a moment of triumph. But it was also a rarity. Most elves never got that chance, and even if they did, they wouldn't take it. Dobby's freedom set him apart. He struggled at first, lost without a master to serve, but he adapted. He found purpose in protecting others, in using his magic to help rather than obey. Unlike Winky, he didn't mourn his freedom. He embraced it. He even went so far as to wear clothes, a symbol of defiance against the centuries-old tradition that kept his kind in rags. Yet, for all his courage, Dobby was alone. The other elves saw him as strange, even pitiful. They couldn't understand why he would choose a life of uncertainty over the comfort of servitude. When Hermione tried to help them, they reacted with the same resistance. They didn't want to be saved. They were terrified of what freedom might bring. Even Hogwarts, the supposed sanctuary of enlightenment and progress, did nothing to change this. The elves who worked there remained unpaid, unseen, and unappreciated. Their existence was a secret that no one cared to question. Their presence was accepted in the same way one might accept the presence of moving staircases or talking portraits, just another quirk of the magical world. And then there was Kreacher. His story was perhaps the most tragic of all. Twisted by years of resentment, he clung to the memory of a master who had never truly valued him. Regulus Black had died trying to fight Voldemort, but Kreacher never spoke of it. He kept his master's secrets, even as he was forced to serve those he despised. His hatred for Harry and his friends wasn't just the product of prejudice, it was the result of a lifetime of neglect and mistreatment. But something changed. When Harry showed Kreacher kindness, something inside him shifted. He had spent decades being treated as worthless, only to be given respect by someone he considered an enemy. That single act of compassion was enough to break the cycle. By the time of the Battle of Hogwarts, Kreacher was no longer the bitter, hateful creature he once was. He fought alongside the very people he once scorned, proving that even the most broken spirits could be mended. And yet, despite these glimpses of hope, the fate of House Elves remained the same. The world moved on. The war ended. Voldemort was defeated, but the elves, they were still there, still scrubbing floors, still serving meals, still bound by the same invisible chains that had held them for centuries. Even after everything, wizards never saw the need to change. Hermione may have fought for elf rights, but the rest of the world did not. The Wizarding Society that prided itself on progress and justice still turned a blind eye to the suffering of those who had built it from the shadows. And so the cycle continued.